Today I'm going to tell you a story about how Cecil here and his plant Fred resolved their differences. Once upon a time, in this very leaf, photosynthesis occurred, right inside the chloroplast. Photosynthesis, narrated by John King. Part 1, Light Reaction. At the beginning of photosynthesis, sunlight excites electrons in the chlorophyll of photosystem II. These electrons then go to the electron transport chain, and along the way they open up passages for hydrogen ions to move into the thylakoid membrane. The electrons are then low on energy, so it gets recharged by the sunlight in photosystem I. The electron then moves back into the transport chains, letting in more hydrogen ions before it stops at the ATP synthase. During this, water molecules are being broken apart, and leftover electrons go to photosystem II and restart the system. Hydrogen hang out inside, and oxygen is released. The electron then goes to the outside and joins with NADP plus to make NADPH, and this molecule goes to the dark reaction to carry electrons. The concentration gradient inside the membrane is greater than outside, so they go through the ATP synthase and cause it to turn, and this makes the ADP join with another phosphate group to make ATP. Then this goes to the dark reaction as well. The products of the light reaction are oxygen, NADPH, and ATP. Part 2, Dark Reaction. In this reaction, carbon dioxide comes in from the atmosphere and joins with a 5-carbon molecule to make a 6-carbon molecule. Oxygen is also released into the atmosphere during this phase. Then 2 NADPH and 2 ATP split and rearrange the 6-carbon molecule into 2 3-carbon groups. NADPH and ATP turn back into NADP plus and ADP. Then these go to the light reaction, and 1 carbon leaves the group and goes to make glucose. The products of the dark reaction are sugar, also known as glucose, ADP, and NADP+. While photosynthesis only occurs in plants like Fred, cell respiration occurs in both plants and animals, but Cecil and Fred don't know that. Cell respiration. Part 1, Glycolysis. This process occurs aerobically and anaerobically, which is with or without air. First, glucose from food eaten by Cecil, or in Fred's case, photosynthesis, is broken down by 2 ATP into 2 pyruvic acid molecules. These pyruvates go to the matrix of the mitochondria, and during this process, 2 ATP are gained, and 2 NADH molecules are made and go to the electron transport chain. Part 2, the Krebs cycle, also known as the citric acid cycle. This process occurs aerobically, which is with air. NAD plus joins with 2 high-energy electrons and forms NADH. Then 1 carbon atom from the pyruvic acid molecule made earlier leaves to form CO2, which is then released into the atmosphere. The remaining 2 carbon molecule is known as acetyl-CoA and combines with the 4 carbon molecule to form citric acid. The citric acid then loses 1 carbon atom to make carbon dioxide, and then loses another to form another molecule, carbon dioxide. Then the leftover 4 carbon molecule returns to the beginning of the cycle to restart it. After this, 1 ADP and a phosphate group join to make ATP, and the NADH made earlier goes to the electron transport chain. Then 2 NAD plus molecules go together with high energy electrons to form 2 NADH, and then FAD combines with a high energy electron to form FADH2, which also goes to the electron transport chain along with the 2 NADH made earlier. This all occurs for 1 turn, and 2 turns occur per glucose molecule, so everything made is doubled. Part 3, Electron Transport Chain. This process again occurs aerobically. NADH and FADH2 from the Krebs cycle drop off electrons and turn back into NAD plus and FAD, which go back to the matrix of the mitochondria to restart the Krebs cycle. Similar to the light reaction in photosynthesis, the electrons pass through the electron transport chain and open pathways for hydrogen ions to pass through. Then the electrons leave the chain and combine with 4 hydrogen ions, oxygen, to form 2 water molecules. Then hydrogen ions go through the ATP synthase and join a phosphate group with ADP to form ATP.